Hello and welcome to this podcast. Today I'll be interviewing University of Newcastle student Grace Sedgman on her review of Ian Kershaw's biography, Hitler 1889 to 1936, Hubris, published in 2000. This podcast will occur through the form of a question and answer session, and its purpose is to analytically review Kershaw's book through a discussion of the main themes, methodology, and argument. Let us begin this interview with an exploration into the historical context surrounding the book. Grace, could you explain the thematic field of Kershaw's book and discuss how it aligns with the course context in your Global Age of Revolutions History course?
Kershaw's biography is primarily set in the afterglow of World War I, a turbulent time plagued with political turmoil, government upheaval, and economic suffering, all of which created a climate of desperation which Kershaw paints as the background for Hitler's rise to political prominence. This historical setting explicitly aligns with the Global Age of Revolutions course as it presents the failures of the left and the success of the right revolutions in Germany. The failure of the socialist revolution of the left is evident through the volatile foundation it was built on. The Treaty of Versailles birthed the stab-in-the-back theory, the belief that the socialist government set Germany up to fail with a crippling national debt and humiliating foreign policies. Furthermore, the dismal living conditions that the Great Depression created for everyday Germans culminated in the desperate atmosphere in which right-wing extremism could succeed. Thus, the success of the right was instilled by the failure of the left, illuminating the reactionary nature of right-wing revolutions and how Hitler's skillful use of a prosperous utopian image harvested the desperation of the people to fuel his fascist revolt.
Clearly, the post-World War I setting through which Hitler's ascended power was a turbulent one. Now, the context of the book has been addressed. Let's explore its content. Can you summarize the main themes of Kershaw's biography?
The biography is written in a linear fashion, beginning with Hitler's youth and progressing sequentially to the concluding point of Hitler as a dictator. Kershaw introduces Hitler's unremarkable youth through outlining his unsuccessful education and unemployment, exemplifying how Hitler would have remained a nobody if the prevailing international events had not occurred. World War I fostered a sense of nationalistic pride and belonging for Hitler, and its conclusion sparked outrage and a hatred for socialism. This launched Hitler into the political scene through the joining of the extreme right-wing German Workers' Party. Here, his unique oratory skills and talent for propaganda were uncovered, and he becomes, as Kershaw christens, the drummer of political support. Hitler's progression through the party resulted in his leadership of the failed Munich Putsch, which made clear that the only way to seize power was through legal means. This discovery is reflected in the 1930s as Hitler's policies catered to the masses through the promise of an anti-Marxist regime and a society that transcended class in order to secure popularity. Hitler's ingenuity is shown through the popularity he achieved, which is conveyed through the Night of the Long Knives as it secured total power and marked Hitler's transition towards becoming the Führer.
Well, it seems this book provides a comprehensive insight into Hitler's life from an unexceptional youth to a national leader. Moving on, how would you explain Kershaw's approach to writing this book?
Kershaw employs a structuralist approach to frame his biography. A structuralist approach to Nazi rule is the idea that Hitler seized opportunities as they came, radicalizing the foreign policies of the Nazi regime in response. This opposes the intentionalist approach as it centers on Hitler's control of the Nazi foreign policy in a concise, well-planned program. Kershaw applies this notion of structuralism through Hitler's intelligence in harvesting the chaos of German society and using it to his advantage to rally support. David Welch highlights Kershaw's structuralist approach as he states that Kershaw's sympathies for structuralism become apparent through a focus on the structural content of decision-making and Hitler's inability or unwillingness to keep the circumstantial chaos in check. Moreover, a biographical methodological approach is employed as a lens for Kershaw's research, Miller describes this approach as a methodology that emphasizes the placement of the individual within a nexus of social connections, historical events, and life experiences. Thus, for Kershaw, Hitler provides a vehicle to write an analysis of the wider social and political forces in Germany.
How effective was this biographical approach?
Kershaw's structuralist biographical approach is effective as it provides a comprehensive personal insight into the critical events that Hitler experienced from his unremarkable formative years to his acquisition of power. However, a key flaw to this biography is that it is an effective study of Hitler, but less effective for the study of the wider societal and cultural events of the time. Bruce Pauly reinforces this notion as he states that this biography runs the risk of over-personalizing history, overemphasizing the role of the individual in shaping and determining the events, and ignoring the social and political actions that took place.
Now that we have established that Kershaw's biographical approach was highly effective in demonstrating the rise of Hitler and Nazism, I wonder, Grace, if you could explain Kershaw's perspective of this book.
The crux of Kershaw's argument is his refusal to accept the notion that Hitler was an unintelligent lunatic. Instead, it is proposed that Hitler was an expert propagandist and possessed a strikingly sharp mind that could impress seasoned diplomats. A notion Kershaw portrays through an analysis of Hitler's speeches and the success it had in increasing the party's membership. Furthermore, Kershaw stipulates that the counter-argument that portrays Hitler as intellectually ignorant runs the risk of mystifying what happened, as it creates a barrier to understanding the appeal that he possessed for the desperate people of Germany. This air of contentiousness is continued through Kershaw's controversial opinion that Hitler did not learn his anti-Semitic views in Vienna, as Kershaw presents that he maintained numerous Jewish relationships during this time. Nevertheless, he states that it is not possible to attribute Hitler's anti-Semitism to a singular destination of Vienna, and the issue of anti-Semitism itself becomes a background policy for the Nazi regime, as Hitler concentrated his attack on Marxism to ensure electoral support. Ultimately, Kershaw's argument is one of originality and controversy. How effective is Kershaw's argument? Kershaw's argument is highly successful, as it presents a fresh and intelligent perspective to Hitler's rise to prominence. Historian Bernard Wasserstein highlights the triumph of this biography as he commends Kershaw on his masterful control of the sources that he has used and his effective integration of argument and narrative, all of which is a commendation to the vigorous writing style of Kershaw. However, a crucial flaw to Kershaw's argument is the relatively small portion of primary sources that have been employed to describe Hitler's private life. This, Bruce Pauly states, negatively impacts Kershaw's argument as it restricts the insight that the audience is able to attain of the decision-making of Hitler, as it remains a mystery. Finally, reading and learning experience. How would you describe the impact the book had on you, and whom would you recommend the book? My personal reading experience was a positive one. The book challenged me to consider Hitler in a different light, as more than just an unintelligent opportunist. For the most part, I agree with Kershaw's perspective. However, I believe that Hitler's time in Vienna had a greater anti-Semitic influence over Hitler than Kershaw acknowledges. Historians echo my enjoyment of this publication, as it is highly regarded by Kevin Overton, as he congratulates Kershaw on his highly readable account of Hitler's rise to power. Also, Bernard Wasserstein reinforces this sentiment as he classes it as an outstanding biography. I would recommend this book for educated people with an interest in mid-20th century European history, due to Kershaw's contemplation of complex historical terminology and the density of information. Finally, this book will continue to impact my learning, as it has prompted me to question why socialist revolutions from the left are deemed as revolutionary and are opposed with extreme force. In the case of Germany, it was the Free Corps, but similar revolutionary acts from the far right are not seen in the same extremist light. And with that, I conclude the podcast. Thank you for listening.